Poetry is a universal language. Both the most primitive people have used it and the most educated. It is eagerly read and listened to throughout history. And why is it important? Poetry is a kind of language that says more and says it more intensely. It widens and sharpens our understanding of our own existence, of what it means to be alive. Let me try to explain this way. If you use an encyclopedia or a dictionary to define what an eagle is, you might turn to the page or look it up online and you'll see a picture of an eagle and it would give a description of what an eagle is. And it's true that we can learn a lot of facts and interesting things about eagles, but in learning facts from ordinary language, we miss something. We miss something about the majesty and power and experience of what it is to see an eagle. The writing in a dictionary doesn't give us the sense of the living creature. To show you what I mean, I want to show you a short poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson called The Eagle. It reads, "The eagle, he clasps the crag with crooked hands. Close to the sun in lonely lands, ringed with the azured world he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls, he watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls." When this poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson, The Eagle, is read well, you feel like you get a sense of the experience of the eagle. The clasping crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands, ringed with the azure world he stands. Wrinkled sea beneath him crawls, he watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls. Where a dictionary might analyze what an eagle is, a poem approaches the experience. It allows us to imagine and participate the thunderbolt falling towards the wrinkled sea. It's beautiful, and it uses poetic elements to convey that beauty. Not all poetry is beautiful like the eagle. Sometimes poetry is appalling. And in doing so, we still gain an experience of being human, of feeling emotions. Sometimes poetry is a real life experience that makes me cry. Many of my students get overwhelmed when reading poetry, trying to figure out the exact meaning, and those AP tests, the poetry sections, can be difficult. And there are so many elements of figurative language, it's hard to memorize them all. But poetry's job is to capture the imagination, and whether or not you recognize every element of figurative language in a poem, you can still figure out how it makes you feel. You can still make personal connections. Now, here in front of me is an example of the AP literature test. Almost always the poetry essay is about trying to find the figurative language in the poem and how that author has used the figurative language to convey their meaning. And your job as the essay writer is to recognize how the figurative language is conveying this theme. But like I said, there are so many elements of figurative language. There's imagery, assonance, metaphor, similes, onomatopoeia, personification, refrain, rhyme, stanza, repetition, rhythm, couplets, kenning, kilograms, allusions, foreshadowing, hyperbole, irony, paradox, idioms. I wrote a list because there are so many. And to be honest, there's even more than that. You don't have to identify all of them, but it's good to have an understanding of what they are and how they work so that you can pull them from a poem. And all poets use figurative language. It's a master skill. These classic poets from the 1500s to even modern day poets. For example, here's a poem that many of you probably know that contains lots of elements of figurative language. It goes like this. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, there's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs, but he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking how everybody's joking now, the clock run out, time's up, over, blow. That is a poem, and that poem contains a ton of figurative language. That poem, Lose Yourself by Eminem, conveys a significant experience that he had. Now we can all listen to it and sit back and enjoy it, connect to it, but let's take this a step further. Let's analyze it. Let's figure out how he's used these different elements of figurative language to express his idea. Now, some of these elements of figurative language are all about using sound to help convey meaning. It draws your attention to certain words based on sounds. One of the most common elements of figurative language is rhyme. There are so many poems and songs that use rhyme to help create these sounds, this flow. Lady Gaga's song, A Million Reasons. The rhyme scheme is very obvious in the song. In that first line, the end rhyme, pray, rhymes with the third line, way, And the second line, better, rhymes with the fourth line, leather. This is what's called an A-B-A-B rhyme. Some poetry follows consistent rhyme schemes like this throughout the entire poem. It might be A-A-B-B-C-C-D, A-A-B-B-C-C-D. So one thing to look at when you're looking at a poem is, do the end lines rhyme? And if there is a rhyme, what is the pattern and structure of that rhyme scheme? If you're taking a test, like the AP test on paper, I would take a pen or pencil and mark it out. Here, I see thought and wrought, wear and prepare, sought and taught, aspire and fire, hire and desire. I see an obvious rhyme scheme here, and when they're asking about poetic elements, most definitely, if you notice a rhyme scheme, use it. Now, not all rhymes have just end rhyme like this. Some of them have internal rhymes. Eminem, for example, does this a lot. Like, for example, he's nervous, but on the surface he's ready. Nervous, surface. A lot of really great poetry doesn't just have end rhyme, it also has internal rhyme. Another poetic element that deals with sound is not the end rhymes necessarily, but now we're going to be talking about the sounds of the beginning of words. When you have a repetition of sound, for example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, that pa-pa-pa-pa-pa-pa-pa-pa-pa-pa is alliteration. And you'll find lots of examples of alliteration in music. There's a song by Selena Gomez, Love You.
To love, love, yeah, to love, love, you, to love. I needed to lose you to love me.
To love, love, to love, love, to love. I needed to lose you to love me. La, 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 lose you, love me. It really focuses on those words because you have that repetition of the la, la, la. This is not accidental. Notice in the song The Greatest Show from the movie The Greatest Showman, how many of these moments of alliteration, almost every single line in this song has this repetition of sound, this alliteration. Check this out. Colossal we come, these renegades in the ring, where the lost get found in the crown of the circus king. And the sun can't stop us now. This repetition of sounds is on purpose. It's beautiful. It's alliteration. Now, alliteration is when the beginning of the words sound the same, but there's also assonance and consonance. And assonance is when there are vowel sounds that are repeating. In the soundtrack for Aladdin, there's a beautiful song by Naomi Scott, Speechless, where she says, notice this repeating sound of the I, silent, quiet, try it. That's assonance, it's repeating the vowel sounds. And consonance is when the consonant sounds are being repeated. Another part of the sound of it is repetition. Sometimes they repeat single words, sometimes they repeat phrases. An example of repetition is Ed Sheeran's song, Photograph. That message is being repeated for a reason. So one important thing to look at is the way that the poem sounds, whether or not you recognize these rhymes and repetition of consonants or vowels or alliteration. Not all figurative language deals with sound. Probably the most popular are metaphors and similes. Remember, a metaphor is when you compare two things that are not the same thing, but you're saying that they are the same thing. For example, if I say that my father is a bull, there's an image that should pop into your head of a bull. And that description of him being a bull makes you think of things like big, muscly, stubborn, maybe pot-belly, scary. Those descriptions, that image says so much more than just my father is scary. That metaphor has so much more meaning than just a definition. If I said my mother is like a pecking hen, that's a simile because I'm using the word like or as, but I'm still comparing two things that are not the same. And when I say she's like a pecking hen, what do you imagine? She's pestering, but yet also mothering and has me under her wing. The Jonas Brothers have a song called Sucker that uses metaphor in a great way.
You're the medicine and the pain, the tattoo inside my brain, and baby, you know it's obvious. I'm a sucker for you.
He uses this metaphor of being the medicine and the pain, that she is both a cure and a cause for his pain. And when he says that she's the tattoo inside his brain, that idea that I can't get rid of you, you're permanent and you're etched inside of my head. Gym Class Heroes has a song, my heart's a stereo, it beats for you, so listen close. This metaphor, my heart is a stereo that's beating for you loudly. Now remember, metaphors are saying this is this, my heart is a stereo. Similes are a little softer. It's not saying my heart is a stereo, it's saying my heart is like a stereo, or my heart is as loud as a stereo. And there are so many examples of similes in music as well.
We're beautiful like diamonds in the sky, shine bright like a diamond, just like fire, burning up the way, rocking the world up in just one day, just like magic, I'll be flying free.
Like. And as these are similes, it's not saying you are this, it's saying you're like this. It's a little gentler, but they're still very similar. One of my favorite uses of figurative language is personification. Personification is when you take something that's not human and you give it human attributes, and we do this all the time. For example, when you have a bottle, I might say the bottle is sitting on the counter, the bottle is standing on the counter, but a bottle can't sit and a bottle can't stand. It's not human, but we still personify it. We give it human characteristics to have a relationship with it, as weird as that sounds. Billie Eilish has a beautiful song.
Tell the mirror what she knows she's heard before.
She's personifying the mirror, that the mirror is a she, first off, and that she knows she's heard something before. Personifying that mirror gives it a relationship. And Moana's see the light where the sky meets the sea, it calls me. That light where the sky meets the sea, that spot is calling her. It's personifying that she's having a relationship with that pulling her. Ooh, next, briefly, let's talk about onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is when you have a word that's a sound, like the phone is ringing, ring, or scratches, or plop. I always consider onomatopoeia to be Batman words. Back in the day, when I was really young, they had this Batman show, and anytime Batman and Robin would punch the bad guys, you'd have this splat that come out that say, pow, bang, kerplop. Onomatopoeia has an interesting way of stopping a poem and grabbing your attention. Ariana Grande, Nicki Minaj, and Jessie J sing that song,
Bang, bang, into the bomb, I know you want it, bang, bang, I know the girl, aren't you headed?
right? And bang, bang, that's the sound of gunshots. That's onomatopoeia. Another one we've got to talk about is hyperbole, and this is when you make a great big exaggeration. Now, some people consider hyperboles to be lies, but it's not. It's an exaggeration to help convey the feeling that you have to your audience. So for example, if I said to you that I caught a fish this big, but the fish was really just this big, the reason I'm exaggerating it is because I want you to be as excited as I am. So technically it's not a lie, because my point is to express the same feeling. Vanessa Carlton sings this in her song,
Cause you know I'd walk 1,000 miles if I could just see you tonight.
I'd walk 1,000 miles if I could just see you. That's a great exaggeration. The last one I want to share with you is allusion, and the reason I picked allusion last is because it's my favorite kind of poetry to write. When you allude to a famous person, a famous event, or famous characters, something from history. And the hope is when you make these allusions that your audience will have some kind of emotional connection to them in the way that you do. So it gives it a bigger meaning. Like for example, you'll see speeches where I saw one where Obama said, "From Selma to Stonewall, we will stand for our civil rights." Now, if you don't know what happened in Selma or Stonewall, that's not gonna have any meaning to you at all. But the hope is there are people in the audience that have a connection. And our Black Americans have a connection to Selma. That is the bridge, that is the place where Martin Luther King marched to be able to vote and have the right to vote. So when he says from Selma to Stonewall, hopefully Black Americans recognize the word Selma and civil rights, and they think, hey, he's talking about me. So when he says from Selma to Stonewall, Stonewall is this famous bar where it was a gay bar, and a lot of the police tried to attack the gay community there. And they stood up for themselves and they fought back, and that was the moment that they started the Pride Parade, was coming out of the Stonewall bar. And so those people who have that cultural history will say, hey, you're talking about my people. And if you don't know those two things, and Obama says, from Selma to Stonewall, we fight for our civil rights, you just think it's a beautiful, maybe moment. But for those who have that emotional connection to Selma and to Stonewall, to say, hey, you're talking about me. Those are my people. That is my history. It's going to have a deeper meaning. This is what illusion is. And remember, illusion is spelled with an A in this case, not an I. Illusion with an I is like an optical illusion. So illusion with an I is it's a trick of the eye, right? Illusion with an A is alluding, hinting, referencing a famous event in history, famous characters, biblical references, things like that. Florida, in his song, I Don't Like It, I Love It, sings, meet me at the studio, bangarang just like Rufio. If you don't know who Rufio is, first, I'm sorry for you, but bangarang is his calling card. The Chainsmokers and Coldplay have the song Something Just Like This. In the beginning of the song, look at how many references to historical events, people, and literature characters are here.
Been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, Achilles and his gold, Hercules and his gifts, Spider-Man's control, and Batman with his fists. And clearly I don't see myself up on that.
Illusion, 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 illusion. Now remember, this is not everything that's figurative language, and I think it's a really great assignment to get a list of elements of figurative language and to find one of your favorite songs that's written in English. Print the lyrics of the song and scribble all over it. I want to identify when they're using onomatopoeia and hyperbole and illusion and alliteration and consonance and assonance and repetition and hyperbole. Notice that great musicians, great poets use these elements of figurative language all the time. And many times they're layered upon layered upon layered. As a class, we're going to deconstruct a song and try to find as many elements of figurative language in the song that we possibly can. And there are tons. You probably won't catch all of them, but try to. Even things that maybe we didn't talk about in this video. Find some irony, some paradox, idioms, kennings, calligrams, there are so many. But check out how brilliant the musicians are that you love and how brilliant the poets are that we're going to be analyzing. We're starting poetry. Don't be intimidated. It's beautiful and a little tough, but we can do this.